So welcome everybody. This is our monthly spirituality salon, and I think most of you have been here before. So you know the routine, which is that we like to have a guest speaker and a new theme each month. So tonight it is my great privilege to introduce Kim Bobo, and she is the executive director of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. She is nationally known as a promoter of social justice, and she leads VIC's advocacy, outreach, and development work. Kim joined Virginia Interfaith Center in 2016, and she immediately mobilized a faith-based advocacy campaign and played a leadership role in the statewide Healthcare for All Virginians coalition, which advocated for Medicaid expansion and which achieved the passage of that legislation in 2018. Kim moved to Virginia from Chicago, where she founded and served as executive director of Interfaith Worker Justice. And that's the largest network of people of faith engaging in local and national actions to improve wages, benefits, and conditions for workers. And then before that, Kim was the national organizing director for Bread for the World. So I had asked her when we came on how long she was at the Interfaith Worker Justice Coalition. She was there for 18 years. So it sounds to me like Kim has been doing this her entire adult life, which is really impressive. She has a bachelor's degree in religion from Barnard College, and she has a master's in economics from the New School for Social Research. That's a tongue twister. Currently, she's a member of the Wesley United Methodist Church, where she sings in the choir. And I also thought this was interesting that she served as the choir director at a prior church for 25 years. So it is my great privilege to turn the salon over to Kim, who is going to talk with us on our theme of faith-based organizing.
Well, thank you, Laura, and thank you. Somebody speaking? Okay. Anyway, thank you, Laura and Darcy and Nora and all of you for having me with you this Friday night. It's great to be there. So the Virginia Interfaith Center does faith-based advocacy, and people have asked me, well, what's that? How is that different from other advocacy? And it's not different in terms of many of the things that we do. But we do try to engage people out of their own faith or spirituality, and connect people with others in the faith community who share similar values, particularly about making our Commonwealth more welcoming, more equitable, and more inclusive for all. And so the Virginia Interfaith Center has actually been around for almost 30 years. And we, have kind of, like lots of organizations, gone through ups and downs, but the last 5 or 6 years have just been so exciting. And so I really want to talk with you about sort of the core work that we do, which is engaging people of faith and goodwill. So we're trying to be more inclusive there, people of faith and goodwill, in advocating economic, racial, and social justice in Virginia's policies and practices. So we try to have a faith and justice voice at the General Assembly. And I can tell you, there are not that many advocates who have that voice at the General Assembly. There's the 36 paid lobbyists for Dominion, all in their suits. There are the Restaurant Association and the Chamber of Commerce and the Retail Federation. But there's a handful of sort of folks who are really trying to stand up for the little guy, the little man or woman, right? The person who doesn't have a powerful lobbyist voice in the General Assembly. That's our role, to engage the faith community in having sort of a voice for everybody in Virginia. And one of the things that we try to do is be very strategic and careful about what we work on, frankly, so we can be effective. If we say we're going to do 10 things and we can't do any of them well, we are not all that helpful to anybody. And so we are always trying to do our best to narrow down what we work on to 4 or 5 things so we can try and really focus and be effective. And we have been. So again, some of the big victories are almost always done in coalition, but our work is kind of anchoring the faith community's engagement. So that was certainly true for Medicaid expansion. We anchored the faith work there. And I know we moved some of the legislators that no other group moved, because they were Republicans who were people of faith, and we reached them. So I know we made a difference there. We also anchored the work on the minimum wage. You all probably saw that on May 1st, the minimum wage finally went up after 12 years from $7.25 an hour to $9.50 an hour, and it's scheduled to go up again to $10.50 an hour in January 1st of next year. So, and then it's on kind of a little path. We anchored that work. We also, jointly with the Virginia Poverty Law Center, were able to reform predatory lending in Virginia. Long fight, but put in place a whole set of new rules so people can't be taken advantage of, at least not to the extent that they were previously. And then a set of work that we have completely made happen in Virginia is a whole set of work around wage theft. Now you can imagine some of this comes out of my 18 years experience with Interfaith Worker Justice, where I also wrote a book on wage theft. So I know a lot about the issue of wage theft, but I'm gonna turn, the sun is kind of hitting me right now. Just turn a little bit, there we go. So we actually, I read the Virginia laws related to worker rights, and I just was aghast at how bad they were. I just had never seen anything like them. And so I put together a task force to try and look at what we could do. And then we set about trying to reform a lot of the wage theft laws. And we've passed, I think, 6 or 7 laws now, trying to make it better for workers in terms of protecting their wages. So among the things that we've done, we got rid of most of the racist Jim Crow language that exempted workers from the minimum wage. So it used to exempt domestic workers, shoe shine boys, caddies, concession workers, movie ticket takers. Anyway, there was this whole long list of folks, but they were all categories of workers that were historically African American. Now, the one category we have not yet been able to get rid of is the exemption for farm workers. And so now that the minimum wage has gone up, farm workers will not get that increase because they're not covered by the Virginia minimum wage. So I'm going to come back to that because we're going to keep fighting on that one. So we did that. We did a couple reforms related to the Department of Labor and Industry. It used to be if you filed a complaint, your employer could fire you for filing the complaint. So obviously we thought that was dumb. So we did some protection against retaliation. It used to be that the Department of Labor, if you complained, they would go in and investigate, but only for you and not for anybody else in the workplace. And obviously if they're stealing from Laura, they're probably stealing from everybody else in the workplace. So again, now they can go in and investigate for everyone. Virginia had no pay stub requirement, so we wrote a bill that required employers to provide a pay stub that explains how people are paid. So now there's a pay stub requirement in Virginia. And then the really big one that we got passed last year is one called a private cause of action, which basically allows attorneys to represent workers in court and get paid for it. And so if a worker has gotten cheated of his or her wages, then they can find an attorney. The attorney can go to court on their behalf, and they can recover double the amount of wages for the workers, or sometimes triple, and get the attorney's fees on top of that, so they don't come out of the workers' wages. So this is a game changer in Virginia, because previously there were 3 people who were the investigators for the Department of Labor and Industries for the entire state. Now we've got a whole sort of army of attorneys who can take these cases And so we're working with them to try and train them and make sure they know how to do this and connect them with experienced lawyers. And we put together a wage theft VA website in English and Spanish so workers can know what their rights are, that explains all the new bills, and that also explains to attorneys that this is a really important set of work for them to undertake as well. So we've really led on all of the wage theft stuff. This last year, just to give you a very concrete example, the issues that we chose to work on and that we won on, first one was abolition of the death penalty. You know, we had gotten approached by the Virginians for Alternative to the Death Penalty, who'd been working in this area for a long time. And what they said was, you know, we think the way to really win this is to have a really strong Black church presence on this, that Black church leadership have made the difference in other states, and you guys have the best connections with the African-American churches. Could you anchor this work and really help us frame the death penalty in Virginia as a descendant of slavery in Virginia and lynching in Virginia? And that's what we did. And so we early on got the Legislative Black Caucus to adopt it as one of their top priorities. We got 430 mostly African-American clergy to sign a clergy statement. We had an African-American clergy press conference. We did prayer vigils at 6 different lynching sites around the state. We delivered letters to every legislator. And I think we, you know, helped turn the tide on this issue. Again, there were a lot of people worked on this issue for a very long time, but I think we helped put it over the finish line. And my staff person who was leading the work was asked to speak at the governor's signing of the bill, which I think, you know, again, indicates recognition of the work that we did on that one. So we did that one this year. We've also been working for the last couple years trying to get paid sick days. Right, there's 1.2 million workers in Virginia without paid sick days. So we've, you know, taken on this cause. Well, this year we didn't get the full thing, but we got paid sick days for 30,000 home care workers. And if anybody deserves paid sick days, it's certainly home care workers. Right, they're caring for the sick and the vulnerable, and they don't make much money. Very important. So we will continue to fight on this one. And one of my really talented staff realized that a lot of undocumented pregnant women were excluded from Medicaid, but it was possible to get federal money to help with it. And now some folks end up going to the emergency room and have problems, and the state ends up paying anyway. So anyway, we wrote these couple budget amendments and managed to get health care, prenatal health care for 7,000 undocumented immigrant women, and raised extra money for the state on with it. So it's really a total win-win on that one. So that was fun. And then we did a couple more sort of resolution things. We did a water as a human right resolution that is setting us up for work to fight privatization of water systems around the state. And we did a study. We got a bill to get a study on equitable public transportation and how do we make sure that public transportation is serving folks. So you can already, the one bill that we lost again this year was trying to remove the farm worker exemption on minimum wage. So the 2 things that we have not yet won on that were on our agenda are back on the agenda for 2022. So that's paid sick days for the remaining 1 million workers or so who need it, and trying to continue to push to get that farm worker exemption removed. Very important. The other things that we will likely do, and again, I have a board of directors that will meet in June and kind of probably make the final decision. We've done a survey of our members. You know, we have a lot of process to get there, but we'll likely do 2 criminal justice reform things, really building on our abolition work. One, to try to end the excessive use of solitary confinement in Virginia. I mean, we just use it way, way too much. And it's just, you know, we've all been in some solitary confinement through the pandemic, and we know it hasn't served us well. And so to be in a tiny little room for, you know, days and weeks on end, and sometimes there's some people in our system who've been there for years on end. It's just cruel and unusual punishment. So that will be one. The other is trying to get some reforms in what's called pretrial detention. So this is both cash bail and it's access to attorneys when they come up for bail and come up initially in the pretrial time period. Right now, people are so disadvantaged if they're poor that they end up in jail because they're poor. They can't get the bail, they don't have an attorney. And so we don't have an equal justice system for people. It's really skewed toward those who have money. And so we really want to see some reforms. I think we have a very good shot at some of those reforms going forward. So those will be probably the two criminal justice reform things. And then the last area that we are likely to work in this year, a lot of concern about affordable housing, obviously. But we're also concerned about the historic discrimination against African Americans and the redlining on housing, and you know, lack of access to credit, and that people don't have inherited family wealth that can help with some of those first-time home buyer kind of things that white families have. So we're working with the Virginia Poverty Law Center, which we've worked with before, to craft some legislation really around a housing reparations bill that would try to provide extra support particularly for home buying for people who've been locked out of the system in the past. As you can see, a lot of what we work on has real racial equity connections. You know, we don't want to just talk about racial equity. We want to really address some of the laws that can change the balance of power in Virginia. So that's what we're likely to do next year. But, you know, to do that, it all starts now, right? It's not like another time, right? So the General Assembly begins in January, but the real work occurs now and going from now to the end of the year. So things you all can do. So first, everyone should be on our email action alert, because if you aren't, you probably won't know what you can do about these issues. Because, you know, you're not going to read it in your local newspapers. And it's just impossible. Even if you're a Twitter follower, you can't follow enough what's going on and what to do. So on policy work, especially, you have to be connected with an organization like ours that can give you information about what's going on. Secondly, you can meet with your legislators and talk with them about some of these bills. In the next month, we will have fact sheets up on all the bills that we're working on. And throughout the summer and then into the fall, small groups of people often schedule meetings with their legislators. And actually, it's gotten even easier under COVID, where you can do it all virtually. Legislators are pretty accessible. And so you all sometime could figure out who all are your legislators and schedule some meetings with them and talk with them about some of these issues. Again, you all are in some rural areas, and so you could maybe be really helpful on the farm worker stuff, because all of the legislators who represent farming communities, you know, get an earful from the Farm Bureau about how they can't possibly raise wages for farm workers, which of course is malarkey, but you know, they get an earful on it. And so again, that's a place where you guys could be particularly helpful. Any of you who are involved in congregations, we have a liaison program with congregations where we ask try to find a volunteer or two who will serve as a liaison with the congregation and help connect us. The liaisons do monthly calls throughout the year about the policies and things going on. So again, we'd love to have some of you connect with us that way. We also have a pretty solid civic engagement program where we try to help people make sure they're registered to vote, that they know when the primary is, that they've got their stuff at, their ballot for the primary if they need it. And then we've already sent out, here are the questions we'd like everyone asking candidates, because the candidates will be in your community, right? They're running for election, and so they will be in your community. And right now, we are working with governor candidates to do Facebook Live forums with workers who need paid sick days, and trying to get the candidates talking about what they will do as governor around paid sick days. We've done Delegate Carter and Governor McAuliffe, former Governor McAuliffe. We've got it scheduled with McClellan. We've got a commitment to do it, but not scheduled yet, with Jennifer Carroll Foy. And of course, we've asked all the Republicans as well. I mean, we are bipartisan, so we try to work with both Republicans and Democrats. So, so again, we are, but we would like you to be a part of this too, right? I mean, ask your legislators or ask any of these governor candidates when they come to your community, will you help us get paid sick days for everybody who needs it, not just a small group of people? No exemptions, no employer size exemptions, a standard for everybody. And will you help us get a minimum wage for farm workers, right? So again, start asking the questions about these. All of you can do that now. Then on January 22nd, we have our annual big lobby day in Richmond. It's called our Day for All People. We would anticipate, we usually have the governor there a couple times during the term. So we would anticipate that we would likely have the governor speak, whoever the new governor is. And it's a wild, long day. From where you might want to come the night before into Richmond and stay in Richmond, make a whole little couple days of it. But we would certainly love to have you a part of that. And then during the General Assembly, normally during the year, I don't bombard people with emails. We do like a weekly round, what's called our weekly roundup. So we do one a week. During the General Assembly, every time there's something that you can be effective on, we will send you an email about it. And so sometimes there's a lot. But again, we almost never have more than 24 hours notice about when something's going to be heard in committee. It's just how the General Assembly operates. And it's again, part of why it's impossible for people anywhere in the Commonwealth to be effective if you're not connected with people who are in the General Assembly day in and day out, and following the committees and following the schedule and know how to really participate. So my staff's job is to really get that information to you and provide the fact sheets and the tools and the way to help you be effective. And that's for us what faith-based advocacy is. It's really calling and inviting you to be a part of a broader vision of inclusiveness and equity and fairness for everybody, to engage you in doing it with others of maybe different faiths and different backgrounds, but of shared values. And we really try and equip you with the tools so that you can be effective in the moment when you're called upon. So let me stop and see what questions and comments and thoughts people have.